You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Texas bakery rakes in the dough after viral brawl with MAGA, based on an article by Nicole Charky-Chami. When a bakery becomes an opposition organ, the story behind the cookies. A Texas bakery went viral after posting that it was not interested in celebrating July 4 and saying it was embarrassed by what the country has become under MAGA. The owner, Hailey Popp, publicly rejected Trumpism, sold distress sugar cookies, and then posted video clips of hostile calls and backlash from MAGA critics. That is the surface story. The real story is that a pastry shop had to become a civic dissenter because the broader political system has made open contempt for democracy feel normalized, rewarded, and endless. Power has a name. The people with actual power here are not the bakery workers taking calls or the customers buying cookies. Power sits with the Trump-aligned political machine, the Republican officials who keep feeding it oxygen, and the media ecosystem that turns grievance into identity and intimidation into performance. The source is blunt about one thing that matters: this is not random outrage. The bakery owner says the administration is corrupt and calls it fascist. That is not neutral language, but the larger point is harder to dodge than the adjective. The political center of gravity in the GOP is still organized around Trump, and Trump still commands a movement that punishes dissent and rewards cruelty. The misdirection game, the backlash mechanism, is familiar. MAGA turns its own political decay into a consumer spectacle, then pretends the people naming the decay are the aggressors. A bakery says the country is in distress. The movement that has spent years normalizing grievance and intimidation acts offended that anyone noticed. That is the trick. Deliberate political harm gets recast as hurt feelings. Authoritarian behavior gets laundered into controversy. The people most responsible for the damage insist the problem is tone, not power. They want the country to debate whether a bakery was rude instead of whether a convicted felon leading a reactionary movement is dismantling democratic norms in public. The useful outrage machine. The online sellout matters because it shows something else. There is real appetite for institutions, however small, that refuse submission. People saw an ordinary business speak plainly and responded not just with clicks but with purchases. That is not a revolution, but it is evidence that MAGA intimidation is not total. Still, the reaction also reveals how degraded political life has become. A bakery's 4th of July post becomes national news because normal political accountability is so weak that even symbolic resistance feels exceptional. The system has trained people to treat basic democratic dissent as a stunt. Democrats should learn the right lesson. This is not a lesson in branding courage. It is a lesson in political clarity. The bakery's defiance resonates because it names what much of official politics still evasively circles. Trump is not a conventional opponent, and MAGA is not a healthy conservative faction with a few rough edges. It is a coercive political project with a taste for punishment and a talent for capturing institutions that hesitate too long. Democrats should not read this as a cue to admire small business heroics from a distance. The point is more uncomfortable. When Democratic opposition looks strongest in a bakery's Facebook post, that is evidence of how much institutional work remains undone by the party that is supposed to hold the line. Popular disgust is real. It needs a political vessel with more force than a viral post. What this actually reveals. The deeper pattern is simple. Authoritarian movements rely on normalization, then weaponize outrage when anyone breaks the spell. They want obedience from the bottom, impunity at the top, and a public too exhausted to say plainly who is doing what to whom. Hive Bakery did the rare thing in contemporary America. It described power as power. That made the movement angry, because nothing unsettles reactionaries faster than being named accurately. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article, with the automated voice of Amy. Thanks for listening.